Okay, so now we're going to talk about the general strategies. Okay, so that you may, for example, use in the IELTS speaking exam. So the section introduces strategies that can be used in all three parts of the test. The strategies will briefly introduce, like for example, in the section, and then the way that use these strategies will be explained under each part of the test. Let's go, for example, to the number one, which is a bad example of a speaking test. A bad example. Question number one. Do you like to watch movies? This is the examiner. The student, like the candidate, will say, yes. What sort? Drama. Do you have a particular favorite? Like, no. Do you have a favorite actor? No. Actually, this is actually a very bad sample of answering. Okay. So here, actually, the examiner will not be able to judge you through the four items that we've talked about. There is no pronunciation, there is no grammar, there is no words, nothing. That's why it is a very bad answer. So you need to produce, like, for example, language. You need to talk at least for 2-3 sentences, at least. Okay. If in doubt, the questions are actually yes or no questions. Yeah, it is like logically, when you say, do you like to watch movies? I will say, yes, I do, and that's it. But actually in IELTS exam, you need to talk more. Okay, you need to talk for 2-3 sentences. Okay. Okay, so now let's have a look here why it is a bad answer. It is really important to produce language in the test to get a good score for all four grading, for example, criteria. The example above fails to do this. It is very short, so the examiner is not able to see any fluency. Very few words have been spoken, so it is difficult to assess the pronunciation, the vocabulary, and also the grammar. Okay, so if you answer actually in this way, you will get actually a very low mark, a very low mark. So what are actually the strategies that we need actually to follow? For example, if we want just to make our answers, for example, a little bit longer. Number one, like extend your answers. What are, like, if you want to extend means you make your answers much more bigger and larger, for example. So you need to follow, for example, the following strategies. For example, the strategies below are used to answer the question. What kind of like food do you like? What kind of like food do you like? Okay, so you will be asked a question like this. What kind of food do you like? What kind of sports do you like? What kind of subjects do you like? What kind of places do you like? And so on. So first of all, don't go immediately to answer like my favorite type of food is lunch, is rice and whatever. So don't go immediately to like answer the question, like very specifically, but try to divide, like for example, into 2 or 3 parts. Divide your answer. This is one of the strategies. Like for example, 1 up to 2, like, or 3 parts. The strategy involves giving 2 or 3 reasons for your answer as follows. Like, well, there are 3 kinds of food that I am really keen on. Okay, so keen on means, for example, I'm really into. I am a big fan of. Okay, I'm really like, I really enjoy. Okay, so it is like. Okay, don't start immediately talking about what you like immediately, but you can say there are 3 kinds of food I'm really keen on. There are several types of food that I'm really keen on. There are a wide range of like food I'm really keen on. لا تبدأش على طول في الإجابة شو الطعام المفضل لديك. Okay. طيب إذا هذا أول نقطة. بعدين تقول the one I like best is, the one I like best is مثلا Italian food because it is blah blah blah. I also really like to eat Korean food as it is very blah blah blah. I am also kind of partial, like for example, to Mexican food because it is blah blah blah. Okay, so here you divide like your answer. I know in the reality, actually, في الحقيقة, maybe you like a very specific food and then you're going to talk about it immediately. But try actually to divide your answer. Try to make it a little bit longer. Okay, if you want to gain, like for example, a very good mark. Okay, the answer is going to be like this. The question: what kind of food do you like? Well, there are three kinds of how do you memorize? Well, there are three kinds of food, three kinds of sports, three kinds of colors, three kinds of anything. I am really keen on. The one I like best is Italian food because I am a big fan of pasta. I also really like to eat Korean food as it is very healthy and flavorsome. I am also a kind of partial to Mexican food because it is so hot and spicy. Okay, now the question is actually, what kind of food do you like? So you just memorize maybe some phrases to start your sentences in order to make, for example, the answer, for example, a little bit longer. Like, okay, because if you say like, my favorite food is pasta and that's it. So you need to explain, for example. Okay, this is actually one of the strategies. Strategy number one, try to divide your answer into 2 or 3 parts and give reasons. Okay. All right, so this is number one. Number two, and this is actually very important, which is talk from general to specific. تبدأ من العام إلى الخاص. من العام إلى الخاص. Okay, this strategy involves giving general reason for your answer and then explaining it more specifically and giving, like, for example, as follows. Well, I would have to say that I am a big fan of seafood. Okay, now actually you didn't give a very specific answer. Seafood generally بشكل عام. أنا بدأت من البحريات بشكل عام. ما حددت شيء محدد. بعدين تستخدم in particular. I really like to eat Japanese seafood because it is always so fresh. بعدين تشرح. For instance, sashimi is delicious because the raw fish is so flavorsome. فأنت تبدأ من العام إلى الخاص. من العام إلى الخاص. فالمعلومة العامة هنا general. هذا is a general idea like seafood. There are so many types of seafood. Specific Japanese seafood. Example sashimi. Okay. فإذا مثلا تريد أن تطول إجابتك حاول أن لا تجيب على المعلومة بشكل مباشر. Okay. مثلا what kind of sports that you really like? Oh, there are several types of, for example, sports I'm really keen on. Okay. In particular, جيب واحدة. For instance, أو الطريقة الأولى, for example here, oh, well, there are 3 kinds of blah, blah, blah I'm really keen on. The one I like best is blah, blah, blah. So you just try to make your answers like much more longer.
It's all clear.
But now, okay, so we have 2 strategies. Number one, actually talk from like general to specific in any topic that you will be asked in the exam. Try to talk from general من العام جدا into specific إلى الخاص. And don't just talk about the answer in a very direct way. Okay, try to talk in general way, and then you just give a specific thing, then you give an example. And or maybe you divide your answers as I told you, any question that will be asked like in the exam. Okay, so okay, for example, tell me about a country that you really like. لا تقولش مثلا I like Saudi Arabia. No, there are many countries that I'm really, for example, into. The one I really like best is Saudi Arabia. تتكلم يعني لا تتكلمش على طول على السعودية لأنك خلاص. Okay, so ما راح تقدر تطول إجابتك بقدر الممكن. Okay, so this is 2 strategies you need to follow. Okay, so we have here some notes. When I should, for example, speak at speed rate when I slow down. So first of all, you need to slow down. متى تبدأ تتكلم بشكل بطيء? Number one, if you reach a difficult area or you are unsure about what will you say. Maybe you will be asked, okay, I'm not talking generally بشكل عام, either part number 1, 2, or 3. Maybe you will be asked a very difficult question. So you find yourself are not like able to answer the question. So if you just talk very fast, actually you are going to commit like mistakes. So it's better for you to stop, like to talk slowly. Number 2, actually, if you want to emphasize something, تريد تأكد على شيء. مثلا خطر في بالك كلمة حلوة، مصطلح حفظته وطلع في بالك، grammar قوي، شيء كهذا مثلا. حاجة تريد تأكد عليها، سواء to emphasize something, try to slow down. There are so many types of food I'm really keen on. توقف شوي، تهدئ عشان تعرض لغتك شوي. نفس الكلام, you're using high level language to make examiner notice it. مثلا عندما تتكلم في المضارع التام أو في الحاضر أو في المضارع التام المستمر، أو خطر في بالك مصطلح أو phrase حفظتها، أو idiom مثلا I am over the moon, for example. Okay, or sometimes if you say like how often do you go to the village? How often? You will say once in the blue moon. توقف شوي. Once in the blue moon يعني تتكلم بشكل هادئ عشان تعرف ان هذا idiom مصطلح يركز عليك يقول لك ملاحظات. فاذا كان عندك لغه قويه، مصطلحات حلوه، او اشياء تحس ان انت ما فهمتها، صعب انك تتكلم عليها بشكل سريع، يفضل ان تتكلم بشكل بطيء. راح تقول لي طيب ومعيار السرعه؟ انا عارف في عندك معيار سرعه، لكن اذا سرعت في هذه المنطقه راح ترتكب اشياء كارثيه، ربما تخرج عن الموضوع، ربما ترتكب أخطاء بسبب ما عندك معلومات، ربما أشياء كثيرة. ولهذا حاول أنك تتكلم ببطء. So number 2, actually, when I should speak or speed up, متى أسرع في الكلام. Number 1, if you are comfortable with the topic and what you are saying. مرتاح بالموضوع، جعلك سهل، موضوع سهل. Can you tell me about your family? Well, this is a very interesting question. And then you start talking very fast. هذا أسرع على أساس تبين لها الفلونسي عندك. إذا كان عندك سؤال سهل وحاسس أنك مرتاح في إجابته، حاول تتكلم بسرعة عشان تأخذ معيار الفلونسي. أوكي. إذا كان عندك كلمات قوية ولا قواعد، حاول تبطأ عشان تأخذ معيار الكلمات، وهكذا. Number 2, you are given less important information. تحس أن المعلومات يعني ضعيفة أو معلومات مو كويسة أنها تقال أو حاول أنك تسرع من فوقها، يعني حاول أنك تمشي بشكل سريع، لأنك لو تركز على المعلومة وهي معلومة تافهة ممكن يأخذ، لأنه بعض الأحيان هو لا يركز على كل شيء يقال. في أشياء تتوه على الإكزامينر، في أشياء تسقط منه سهوا، في أشياء ما يركز عليها، بينما هو يكتب ملاحظات أنت بتتكلم شيء ربما ما ركز عليه. فأنت عندما تبطئ بشيء تافه مشكلة، اسرع، حاول تسرع من فوقه. Okay, إذا هذا عرفنا. إذا so you need to slow down actually if you have a very good words, a very good grammar, for example, and actually if you reach to a difficulty, maybe the question is difficult, and if you just talk fast, so you will go off topic or you will commit mistakes. You need to speed up actually if you notice a very easy question that you have heard about, you have used before, you're familiar with. So in this actually situation, you need to speak very fast. And also, if you notice that you are given actually very basic ideas like trivial things, so you need to go over it very fast. You need to go over it very fast. في أيضا حاجة مهمة جدا جدا اللي هي الuser redundant language، اللي لغة الفيلرز. طبعا الأجانب معروفين إنهم يعني يستخدموا هذه الفيلرز. well okay، هذه دائما معروفة عند الأجانب. اوكي. المشكلة احنا كمتحدثي لغة ثانية ما عندنا هذه الأشياء، نفتقر لها، يا نجيب يا نصمت. وأكبر شيء مشكلة في IELTS exam إنك you just stay silent. بس حاول تستخدم هذه الفيلرز redundant language عشان تعطيك مجال للتفكير. So a redundant language is words that don't have any real meaning, such as well, actually, honestly, as a matter of fact, well, to be honest يعني هذا كلهن يعطينك فرصة أصلا للتفكير. اوكي. فيفضل في الاي اس انك ما تجاوب على شيء بشكل مباشر، يا تستخدم فيلرز، يا تستخدم عبارات، يا تستخدم اشياء على اساس تعطيك مجال للتفكير. اوكي. مثلا اذا قال لك describe your family مثلا، هذا بالنسبه لك سؤال كويس. لا تبداش تقول مثلا my family is كذا كذا. ممكن تستخدم pillars. Oh wow, this is a very interesting question. سؤال صعب. Wow, this is a very difficult question. Wow, this is a thing that I have never thought about before. هذا كلها fillers. Well, okay, as you know, as a matter of fact, يعني ما توقف صامت. حاول انك تستخدم الفيلرز بطريقة او باخرى. اوكي. الوقف الصامت هذا مشكلة. حاول انك يعني تشتري وقت للتفكير، يا بإعادة صياغة السؤال، يا مثلا we will talk also about if you want to repeat the question, if you want to ask the examiner, for example, to repeat the question. Also, we'll talk about this. But try to take or try to make, for example, or use, for example, the fillers اللي هي redundant language. فهناك بحث research shows that native speakers use lots of redundant language, but non-native speakers like me and you rarely use it. So use it to be more native-like. Okay, حاول تستخدم الفيلرز. حاول انك تستخدم as a matter of fact, in fact, in my point of view, well, honestly, to be honest, actually, هذا الأشياء خليهن موجودات معك يعني. Well, you know, what I mean is, okay, you know, you get me. المهم حاول انك عشان ما تكون صامت وبنفس الوقت يعني تشتري وقت للتفكير، تشتري وقت. طيب إذا هذا أيضا مهم جدا. في عندكم أيضا using the punctuation اللي علامة الترقيم. بعض واحد يقول لي طيب يا أستاذ ال punctuation marks هذا المفروض في الwriting، إيش دخل ال speaking؟ أصلا ال punctuation marks actually they came from the speaking. Okay. It is nonsense actually when you talk blah 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 blah, do not talk. Actually, so what does it mean a sentence? A sentence what starts with capital letter and ends with full stop and has a complete thought. Okay, so for example, I went to school. المفروض هنا تتوقف. المفروض هنا تتوقف. مش معقول أقول لك في الماضي كنت طيارة سريع. لازم تقول in the past, comma, توقف. هذه الأشياء موجودة حتى في السبيكينج. And comma means you take a breath. تأخذ نفس صغير. هذه comma. Full stop you take a very long or just long breath. تنفس يعني تتنفس. فأنت عندما تقول مثلا the place where I need to go to. هنا المفروض تتوقف شوي يعني عشان توصل المعلومات تأخذ شوية هواء. The place where I used to live in, comma معناه أنك لازم تتوقف. In the past, comma. In 2019, comma. هذا في الكتابة. أما في التحدث توقف. In 2012, I was blah blah blah. تتكلم. Okay. In the past, تتكلم. The place where I used to live in, comma. تتوقف شوي. I went to the mall yesterday. توقف. Long space here. Like you take a breath. Okay. هذه كلها يسموها ال punctuation marks. لازم تتوقف عشان توصل المعاني بشكل صحيح. اوكي طبعا هنا كانت الانترودكشن على الثلاث بشكل عام. So we studied actually the strategies. We studied 2 strategies up to the moment. We'll try to use them, like how to apply them. We studied, for example, divide strategy and also talking from general up to specific. And also we talk about, for example, when you should be very fast while talking and when you should be, for example, slow while talking. And also we talked about, for example, how to use redundant language, the fillers language, and also the punctuations in the علامة الترقيم. Hopefully you understand. Actually, this is the summary for part number 1. So what we talked about actually was about all of them, like all the 3 parts. So part number 1, now we'll start talking about part number 1. Then we will practice some questions. We have actually 42 topics with answers you need to be familiar with. like part number one only. Okay, so you need to prepare, you need to have a look at and you start thinking about the ideas. Because part number one, actually you can guess the topics that will be like, or that will become, for example, in the exam. الأسئلة يمكن أن تعرفها. يعني معك مثلا 50 موضوع أو 40 موضوع قرأتهن، حاول تفكر تتكلم عليهم، خلاص أكيد في مواضيع ستدخل منها. Part number two also, you just practice several types of topics. أكيد سيأتي موضوع. الشيء الذي يصعب التخمين هو البارت نمبر 3 discussion. لأنه الدiscussion عادة أسئلة ستكون بناء على ما تقوله أنت في الكلام. Okay. I used to go there for example a lot of time. الإكزامينر يقول لك why did you used to go there بناء على كلامك أنت. فالأسئلة مترابطة، فصعب أحيانا أنك تخمن الأسئلة اللي ستأتي في البارت نمبر 3. عموما this is actually the summary. So we have 4 up to 5 minutes. That's number one. The requirements, you need to talk for example, answer up to 4 questions about 3 different topics. The suggestions, you need to answer in a full response, not just yes, no. Even if they are yes and no questions, you need to talk more. The examiner can repeat, okay, this is very important. The examiner can repeat the question only one time. Only one time. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat the question again? بعيدها لك مرة واحدة. Okay. أو ممكن مرتين، يعني حاول تستخدمها مرة إلى مرتين، بس لا تكثر منها لأنه ستنقص درجة. تخيل يقول لك what's your favorite food؟ وأنت تقول له well, this is a very difficult question. Could you repeat the question again؟ يعرف على طول إن لغتك ضعيفة. كيف ما عرفت what's your favorite food؟ فأنت خلي مثلا طريقة إنه تعيد السؤال أو تفهم السؤال للأسئلة اللي بتحس إنها صعبة فعلا. Task number 1, you're allowed, it's okay if you use like repeating the question only once or twice. بس لا تكثر منها، مشكلة. Try to speak for about 2 or 4 sentences for each question. يعني ما تتوقف عند حاجة واحدة أو معلومة واحدة، تكلم طول إجابتك. وهذا سنمارسه إن شاء الله مع test number 1. لا زال معنا يومين test number 1. You can ask the meaning of the word, but the examiner can't rephrase the whole question. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the word blah, blah, blah. What does it mean? It's okay, so he can rephrase the word for you. But actually rephrasing the whole question, no. He could repeat the question for you. ممكن يعيد لك السؤال لأنه عامل حسابه، ربما ما سمعته، ربما عندك مشكلة في السمع. Okay, فيعيد لك السؤال. لكنه يعيد لك صياغة السؤال في task number 1 no. يشرح لك كلمة ممكن، لكن يشرح لك السؤال كله no. Focus on the language, not ideas or real opinions. Don't talk about what you believe in. Talk about the things that you feel free, that you think that you are really comfortable with. Okay, اتكلم عن الأشياء اللي تحس أنت مرتاح بها. Okay, مو الحقيقة. Okay, مثلا يقول لك واحد have you been to for example a very far places؟ وأنت ما رحت، تقول له أنا ما قد رحت. حاول إنك تتكلم إنك رحت حتى لو ما رحت. Try to lie. Try to pretend. تدعي يعني، حاول تخترع. Try to make it up like. اختلق قصص وروايات يعني. طيب, so this part of the task lasts for 4 to 5 minutes and consists of questions about you and your country and where are you from. In this part, the task examiners read questions directly from their examiner's book. The questions are going to be asked from the list. Once you finish the first one, he's going to ask you the second. يعني مو من عقلية الإكزامينر، من الورقة نفسها. There is a maximum of 3 different sets of topics and each topic has a maximum of 4 questions. كل موضوع في له 4 أو 3 أسئلة مختلفة على الموضوع نفسه. يعني مثلا لو قال describe for example a sport that you used to play. فأكيد راح يسألك 3 أو 4 أسئلة بنفس الموضوع. Who do you used to play with? Where did you used to play with, for example? Why did you enjoy this, for example, sport? على نفس المنطقة 4 أسئلة. فمجرد ما يسألك السؤال الأول أنت تستطيع خلاص تخمين الباقيات إنه راح تكون بهذه المنطقة، تحفز عقلك على التفكير. طيب the first topic will be about whether you work or study, the place you are living in, the place you are from. The two other topics, straightforward topics such as hobbies, holidays, sports and entertainment. هذا نفس الكلام اللي قلنا. طيب نشوف البروسيجر اللي من البداية. طيب واحد number one, after checking your ID طبعا أول شيء he's going to check your ID. وهذا طبعا راح نقول لكم أنت كيف تجاوب. يعني نقول لك مثلا can you show me your ID or identification card. هذه أيضا لها إجابة. introduce yourself راح تحضر عليها إجابة. your work or study راح تحضر عليها إجابة. hometown راح تحضر عليها إجابة. والبقيات مواضيع كثيرة جدا راح نأخذها مع الإجابات عشان تأخذ فكرة ومعلومة وبعض الكلمات. The examiner will start part number one. طيب he's going to say okay can you give me your identification card عشان يقارن. The person actually who registered is actually the person that is in front of him or her, and just you compare between you and the photo and the ideas like in the passport. هذا أول شيء راح يشيك ال identification card. Number two, the examiner will say now I am gonna ask you a few general questions. طبعا also the examiner might like introduce himself. هو في البداية يأخذ ال ID وبعدين he's going to introduce himself. Like my name is Mokhtar Al-Ansi. I am your English, for example, speaking examiner. And before we start the exam, let me give you like some snapshots about the exam. So part number one is going to be a personal questions. Part number two is going to be like a card. And number three actually is going to be a discussion. Are you ready? Yes. وبعدين تبدأ. يقول لك okay now let's go or let's ask you a few questions about like general questions. The examiner will ask 3 or 4 questions according to different topics. The examiner will then introduce the topic by saying something like, now let's talk about where you live. المفروض أنت إيش يخطر في بالك؟ إنه في 3 أسئلة أخرى غير هذا سيسألك إياها. Let's talk about where you live. يعني أكيد في 3 أسئلة أخرى ستكون يعني في هذه المنطقة. Make sure you pay attention to the keywords the examiner uses to introduce the topic. This is because you will have 3 or 4 questions based on this topic, and you want to be clear what the topic is about. The examiner will ask you 3 or 4 questions based on that topic, such as, do you live in a house or an apartment? Which room do you like the most in your home? In the future, what sort of home would you like to live in? Okay. إذن هذه الأسئلة 4 أسئلة. خلص هذه ال4 أسئلة بعدين انتقل إلى موضوع آخر. في task number 1. When the examiner has finished asking you 3-4 questions based on the topic, the examiner will move into the next topic, okay, by saying something like, now let's talk about your hobbies مثلا and or interests. أكيد راح يكون في 3-4 أسئلة. Okay, now let's talk about your hometown. أكيد يكون في 3-4 أسئلة. Okay. So after the 3 sets of topics, each of the 3-4 questions, the examiner will finish part number 1 and move on to part number 2. Note that part 1 actually will last for 4 up to 5 minutes. So if you give longer answers, it is possible that you may only get 2 topics. أنت عندك 3 sets. إذا أعطيت جمل طويلة يعني بس مو أكثر يعني من 4-5 جمل. فأكيد أنت بتقلص يعني من الوقت بحيث إنه ما راح يسألك مثلاً 12 سؤال، راح يسألك مثلاً 8 أسئلة. So if you give actually longer answers, this is actually a very good thing for you because actually 3 or 4 questions are not going to be asked. لأنه تخيل واحد يقول لك do you like to study? Yes, I do. Where are you from? I am from Yemen. وخلاص وكمل. يعني أكيد هذا راح يخلص الأسئلة خلال دقيقة أو دقيقتين. لكن الشخص اللي يتكلم 3 4 5 جمل أكيد راح يخلص الدقيقتين وإحنا ما زلنا ممكن في الست نمبر 2. فهذا في احتمالية إنه ال4 أسئلة ممكن تكون ما تعرفها أو شيء فتقلل الاحتمالية إنه تقع في هذه المشاكل. This could be an advantage because there is less chance of getting an familiar topic and familiar topic. All right, so اليوم كلها مقدمة. It is like, for example, some snapshots about the exam. بعد ما نخلص إن شاء الله techniques والمعلومات كلها على أساس number 1, we will start practicing actually part number 1. So the strategies actually we have expansion, تمديد أو التوسيع. كيف توسع إجابتك. Okay. مثلا expansion is making something bigger. In IELTS, it is a very good, or it is good to give expanded answers to the questions. This shows that you understand the question and gives you more chance to show your language ability and get higher score. مثلا, do you like riding bicycles? Bad answer, yes. إجابة نوعا ما كويسة. Yes, because it is fun, good for health, and doesn't cost a lot. هذه يعني إجابة كويسة. بس a great answer is going to be like this. Well, I like to ride bikes for a few reasons. The main reason, هذا أيضا ممكن تحفظها. The main reason, I would like also to point out that, I would also like to add that. هذا كله ممكن تحفظها. So the main reason I like to cycle is that I think it is really fun. نفس المعلومات اللي فوق بس بشكل أوسع، بشكل أفضل يعني. And it is a good way to go sightseeing. المعلومة الثانية. I would also like to point out that riding a bike is very good for my health because it can help me to lose weight. I would also like to add that recently I haven't been riding my bike much as I am quite busy at work. هذه طبعا إجابة ضخمة. أوكي، إذا هكذا. فهذا سيحصل على درجة، وهذا سيحصل على درجة ثانية، وهذا سيحصل على درجة رائعة. فحسب إجابتك أنت بتقيم نفسك كم ستحصل مثلا من 9، كم ستحصل من 9. Show language. What colors do you like? Bad answer. I like green and blue. Better response. My favorite colors are light green and navy blue. لكن الآن better response سيكون بهذه الطريقة. Well, my favorite color is magnesite. I guess that's because I'm really into bright and bold colors. حاول تأخذ بعض المعلومات من هذا. حاول تأخذ بعض الأفكار. هذه كلها ملاحظات فقط وتبس. بس ما زال معنا التطبيق أكبر من كذا. في كلمات، في عبارات، في أشياء راح تحفظها كثير. وبدأ يشرح مثلا I also like turquoise. I find that it is very relaxing, peaceful color that reminds me with the ocean or of the ocean. وهكذا. في معنا بعض الأشياء أيضا تركز عليها. The answer uses some less common colors and can impress the examiner with your vocab. That also includes idiomic or idioms like suppression. I am really into. I am really into. I am very big fan of. I am keen on. على كذا وهكذا. اشترى وقت للتفكير. كيف؟ يعني أحيانا ربما تصادف سؤال صعب أو سؤال يعني لم يسبق وسمعت من قبل، أو ما عندك فكرة، أو ما عندك يعني ما عندك أي فكرة. كيف ممكن ما هي الخطوات اللي تسويها يعني؟ أول حاجة repeat the question. read السؤال مرة ثانية. One way to do this is to rephrase the words of the question. Oh, you're asking me about my favorite color, right? يعني هذا طبعا أنت فاهم السؤال، لكن تحاول إنك تعطي نفسك مجال للتفكير. What's your favorite color? Oh, you're asking me about my favorite color, right? Well, هذا كلها أنت بتعطي نفسك مجال للتفكير. تعطي نفسك مجال للتفكير. أيوة، إذا هذا واحد. اثنين, ask the examiner to repeat the question. And I told you several times, don't do it more than once, or you just do it twice. It is okay. You are in a like in the safe way actually if you do it like once or twice. But the problem actually if you did it several times. لأنك ما زلت في أسهل part. دائما تكرر وعادك ما زلت في أسهل part. يعني الأسئلة الشخصية العادية. So in part 1 of the test, the examiner is permitted to repeat the question one time. Note that the question cannot be repeated a second time, and the examiner is not supposed to rephrase the question. You could ask the question to be rephrased or repeated just so that you can have time to think of how, for example, to respond to it. Essentially, while the examiner is repeating the question, you are thinking of what you can say. أنت أصلا قد فهمت السؤال، بس أنت تريد تعطي لعقلك مجال إنه يبدأ يفكر في المعلومة. Doing this once won't lower your score, but obviously if you do it several times often, so it will lower it. So you can also like إذا ما عرفت السؤال ممكن تستخدم هذا الجملة. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat the question? هذا واحدة من ممكن الأشياء. Use some memorized phrases. أيضا في عندكم بعض العبارات لازم تحفظها عشان تعطي نفسك مجال للتفكير. واحد. Well, that's a really interesting question. لو كان فعلا really interesting. مو تقول oh this is a very interesting question وما تقدر تحلها يعني أو تجيب عليه. I am not too sure about that. Let me think for a minute. هذا لو كان عندك سؤال صعب. Well, this is a very difficult question. Can you give me a moment to think? تبدأ تفكر 5 ثواني 10. مو can you give me a moment to think وتسفح في الوقت تخرج عن المألوف وتأخذ دقيقة. يعني حاول انك تأخذ مثلا seconds ثواني فقط. With regards to your question, I guess I would have to say that وانت بعقلك اصلا تفكر ايش ممكن تقول. هذه ايضا واحدة من الطرق. Okay. اذا واحد ممكن to repeat the question. Oh well, you're asking me about blah blah blah. Okay, this is one. أو ممكن تستخدم phrases. Well, this is a very interesting question. Oh, this is a very difficult question. Oh, I have never thought about this before.